Seen Perfidy, I liked your video. I took time to watch it, so I could watch it through a couple times. I took notes. I made a 40-minute reply, and then there's some problem in the source files, and it won't transcode, and won't even write to disk. Well, fuck that. I'm not going to do that again. So let me just get the major issue here. It's too bad, because maybe I should go grab my notes and try to skim over them, but I was rushing anyway to do it in 40 minutes, I guess. So it's very interesting. I like that you carefully, paid attention to points that I had brought up. I like that. As I said before. But anyway, the big picture in this thing is, okay, I like bringing up the UN thing because people always are like, well, of course we spy in the UN. So that's right. We've established that the spying is ubiquitous. Everybody does it. We could discuss whether the United States is where we are we above or below the median, comparing to the G8, or what about the G20, or what about other groups? So the end result is we admit there's a lot of spying. So this is my point. We're not hiding it from other spy agencies. Look, tell me if this is true or not, since I have to break this down to the one thing. Is it not true that if someone as low level as Snowden and Manning, but let's stick with Snowden, had access to all this data, that given that the Russians have spies embedded in U.S. Establishments for generations, so including managers that can hire new spies, they are embedded, that's a safe assumption, then they have all that information. As a matter of fact, it would make a lot of sense to presume that an organization, an espionage organization, as experienced as Russia's, I almost said the Soviet Union's, but the history obviously goes back. The fucking president's the head of the former KGB officer. So they probably have, or not probably, but are a likely candidate to eventually, and could already have, this NSA passkey algorithm, the one that makes it so that our encrypted data isn't really encrypted. They would likely have that. And then they would have all of our emails, our politicians' emails. They'd be able to listen to the traffic going between banks. Who's it being hidden from? We talk about the black ops budgets, and you say, well, Russians can read newspapers. They don't have to. They know the black ops budget every year. That one is a safe assumption. They already know that kind of number. It would be likely that they know it before the president gets briefed on the final number, because they'd be getting it straight from people in the organization making that budget. And you're telling me about ubiquitous spying, which I agree with, doesn't make it right. But then you want to tell me that they'd have to read the newspaper to find out something like the Black Ops budget? No. It's the American people that learn things through these leaks. The spy agencies already know it. They already know it. Now, it's a different example about the money laundering for the Al-Qaeda thing. I forget the name of that deal. But to me, that's another issue where, I don't really believe it's that useful to go about things that way. You talk about having to have a secret trial because, say, maybe one of the witnesses is an agent that's climbed way up in Al-Qaeda, whatever, Al-Qaeda, Al-Ricotta cheese. They've climbed way up there, and they're the ones that tipped us off to where Osama was. Well, the guy that's climbed way up there, he's probably killed a few people. He's like, oh, I gotta kill this woman to prove myself. Okay, yay for America. Gotta prove myself. Gotta do what you gotta do. If you knew those people, if those people could be almost always impeached on character grounds, right? So if you're gonna get information that way, that's fine, but you need an alternate prosecution method. You need to get the evidence that stands not on that person's word, right? Right? Okay, so it's very, very expensive doing things with secrets. Secrets are not as valuable as trust, which we've totally fucked over. It could seem a little harder to do things, but when you want to say that something like taking out that money laundering scam, or we're actually taking part in the crime, so we'll know about it. You say that definitely hurt our abilities. No, not compared to not trying to do things with secrets. Look, you read The Art of War. It's a very, very good book. Espionage plays a role, but it is not what wins war. Okay? No war. Show me the war that was won. You could say, well, here's an interesting little story about an espionage fact. Yeah, there's some great ones in terms of, in World War II, I'm trying to remember, was it the Battle of Normandy, I think? Hugely fascinating story about espionage. And that's what The Art of War will tell you. Yeah, in wartime, in Nazi Germany, you have agents where, how do you know Hitler's favorite dish is pasta? That must have been Jenny, gave it away, his cook. That's the only person that knew that. That's during war, right? We're not in war right now. So, anyway, the frustration in my voice, I mean, the 40-minute video I did was mostly no frustrated voice. So please understand, part of the frustration is from the subject, but part of it's just like, I spent 40 minutes making that. I kind of waited days, getting it together, figuring, well, I want to make sure I watch the whole thing, and then transcoding problems and stuff, so anyway. But this is where where I'm curious. There are lots of details and interesting things to talk about, but this is where I'm curious. Isn't it obvious that if someone as low level as Snowden can have all that information, that the Russians and many, many other countries must have spies in place at that level? And higher. We know higher, so why wouldn't they have someone at that level? They have people in place that probably could hire that kind of person. Yeah, isn't that, with your picture of all the spying going on, isn't that a safe assumption that it's the citizens, the spy agencies know all the information? They rip it off from each other. They know these tactics and methods. We're the ones being kept in the dark. That's what I don't like about it. Okay, that's why I don't think it helps. Okay. I just made a video to Unseen Perfidy. It's about a 40-minute video. And I was aiming to make it fit in an hour. Anyway, I think the main theme there, so there's details there, because he's been going over details. I like that. But there's a main theme here which is about the spying and the problem with it. And the idea that putting something in the newspaper, putting the black ops budget in the newspaper, something, Russians read the newspapers. Russians have spies. If someone as low level as Snowden could get all that information, and as low level as Manning, don't you think we should be smart and assume the Russians, probably a lot of other countries, have not found it impossible to place a spy as a sysadmin? And so we should assume they have all this information. Something like the Black Ops budget, they probably know that every year. They probably are updated before the freaking president. But these emails and stuff, yeah. And do you think that they know about the NSA encryption breaking thing? They have people under deep cover generation after generation too. Do you think they know about that project? When do you think they would get the algorithm to be able to decode all of our encrypted data that goes across the compromised pathways, whatever they turn out to be? Our banking data. What? You think they're hiding that? No. We talk about this commonality, how common it is to spy. That's one of the defenses. Like, I love bringing up the UN thing, because, of course we do that. Yeah, of course we do that. Of course we do that. Okay, now we have it understood. Everybody does it. We're no worse. Everybody does it. So they've got spies in Snowden's position, right? That's a safe assumption. They have spies in that kind of position. They're already being sent that data, right? There's probably real espionage going on with that data. Doesn't seem very well protected with people like Snowden can get at it. So you just have to assume that the Russians have it, right? It's only the American people that are being kept out of the debate, and it's gone on so long, we actually have a secret history that is well known and unknown. I think that's a problem. This is the cost of trying to keep people uninformed. You know, you have if you support the government keeping people uninformed, I don't know, I think it weakens your argument when you're going after some dude that's uninformed. Right? Which is it? How do you want the people, informed or uninformed? I think informed. Alright, this video is to Justicar. Now, I was thinking of going through Justicar's video to Ella to analyze it more closely. Because Justicar says that he wasn't talking at all about interrogation techniques and yada yada yada. But I figure probably already wrecked that conversation, you think, on that point. So let's take the first point he made. Okay, now Justicar, let's take the first point you made. Did you get this far? Okay. The point you make is that it wouldn't matter. Point one, please correct me if I'm wrong. It wouldn't matter if Skep or anybody was biased towards always supporting government actions. Wouldn't matter. All that would matter, you say, is the same thing that always matters. Criteria. Criteria of truth and falsity. Okay, here's the problem with that. How do we find out the truth or falsity of the actions? This is the democracy. We all discuss it and argue with each other, right? And when we say, well, we've done all our arguing, let's vote on how the law is going to work. Let's vote on if we think this particular action is something the government should be allowed to do. And if somebody just supports anything the government does, including breaking the law so that the government can do anything, well, that's going to probably affect how they vote, don't you think? It might. Yeah, I think that in reality, in the real world, it is important. If somebody is biased in a particular way, because there is no God or anybody to go to and just find out. So, like, you're always like, I support the government, they had to do it. If that's your knee-jerk reaction, and there are people like that, not in this conversation, right? But there are people like that. That's one of the most important things you can know in debating them and having a social debate where you're going to vote, you're part of the same national system. It's crucial. Okay, there is no other, if somebody's just going to be, you're acting like, well, it doesn't matter. Yes, he always puts his vote behind the government, but how often is that right? Maybe the government is right 90% of the time, so he's 90% right. No, that's not how it works. Because you make a poor judge of right and wrong if one of your principles is that if they did it already, it's okay, right? So it would definitely matter if that was somebody's position. Of course it would matter. You're trying to make a logical point, and it's just not relevant. That's the problem. Like in some of these arguments with the last few weeks, or one of them in particular, I said I was probably better informed than somebody. And that's a over-the-top thing to say. Why can I say that? Why would I say that when I know I don't have more information in terms of everything? Like, I don't know more about how you mounted your whiteboard. That's information you have. But it's just not relevant, right? The relevancy of information, right, is part of being well informed, right? The person with a billion facts is not necessarily more well informed, especially when we're talking about a political debate, than someone with only 100,000 facts. Because if those 100,000 facts are relevant, that's better information, and thus that's being better informed. Right? Now, I think that your argument makes some logical, philosophical, epistemological errors. You know, just the idea that it's always the same criteria. No, actually every situation could be judged by a wide variety. One could say infinite number of different criteria. One of the things we have to debate is what criteria to use. Right? So it is relevant if somebody has a bias as extreme as this hypothetical that you said, where the person believes into the future just openly, yes, the government will always make a right decision, deserves our support. That would matter. How could you possibly say that wouldn't matter? Doesn't that seem naive to think that a bias that stark wouldn't be relevant? Like, it wouldn't be important to know if you're living in a country where a third of the people think that way. That wouldn't be important. It's not going to affect anything. Are you sure? Because I think you're just trying to point out little logical things which I find interesting, but they're not relevant to what we're talking about. Right? It's interesting, this idea that you raise, because it's all about the incoherence of objective epistemologies. It doesn't matter if somebody is biased towards a certain kind of support. We'll just find out if they're right or not and base it on that, on the truth. Like there's no judgment in the truth, right? Like you can have court cases with no particular judge, no particular jury, a hypothetical unbiased judge, unbiased jury, and let's just get at the truth. The truth would be known. It won't matter if somebody always puts their vote behind the government, because we'll just find out whether they were right or not. No, we won't, because we'll be going to that person to decide what we do next. And they'll have a bias, a systematic bias in their judgment, in the judgment they apply. Okay, so it would be relevant, obviously. Extremely relevant. Okay. Now, the other reason it's not relevant here, besides that error of yours, is because nobody's accused of that, are they? Really? And Ella didn't accuse Skep of that, did she? I don't think so. She says in the very video she doesn't think that. So what you're missing is that in arguments, proper arguments, not interrogations and whatnot, you're supposed to set marks and standards, way stations, like things you agree on, things you assent on. Well, we agree murdering kids is wrong, okay, yes. You don't go, don't get me to agree with you. That'll make my attempt to make you look like a fool more difficult, because I will have agreed with you, and then I would look like a fool in association. Yeah, but that's not, you're going to do these technical points. Okay, do the conversations the way philosophers do conversation, right? If somebody says, well, do you think this or that? Just say this or that. But I already said it once in my life. Just go back through all my videos. You'll see it in there somewhere. I mean, that's just ridiculous.